And I don't think there's a way to know right now how good or bad of a job the NFL is going to do of it until we see how this season goes. I do think there's potential for disaster. Welcome into the NFL on Fox podcast. I'm Dave Helman, and the news just never stops. Welcome back to the show. I think it's been half a week, and we've got plenty to catch you up on. A weekend that is typically all about college basketball. Of course, the NFL never going to rest, not even during March Madness. Since the last time we talked to you, we had a player trade, a huge trade, big-time team, big-time player, big-time money. L'Jarius Sneed switching teams. We'll get to that in a minute. Also, if you haven't heard, the NFL owners' meetings are in full swing in Florida this week, and activity already coming out of those major rule changes. Even in the doldrums of the offseason, you can't take a week off. You're going to want to make sure, like I always say, you are subscribed. Follow the show because you never know what you're going to miss. Please give us a follow. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, maybe even give us a review, preferably a 5-star review. Helps out more than you probably know. Give us a follow on all of your socials at NFL on Fox Pod on all of them. I'm preferential to TikTok. Want to go check out the videos we're making there as I try to keep up with the youth. Wherever you get your NFL content, you can find us there. And even in the off season, you can't take any days off in this league. Let's jump right into it with the newest stuff. This was early Monday morning as I'm catching up on my news before I can even get out of bed. The NFL Competition Committee at the owners' meetings in Florida, Orlando, I believe, vote unanimously to ban the hip drop tackle from the NFL. This has been a major talking point for at least 6 months or so, which is ironic because I don't think I'd heard the term hip drop tackle until maybe halfway through the 2022 season. So something that's only been an issue for about a year and a half is banned on Monday morning. The competition committee doing everything it can to get that type of tackle out of the game. As you might expect, the takes are flying. And I mean, I get why, but as soon as the announcement comes down, you're seeing it from around the league. Former 3-time NFL Defensive Player of the Year, J.J. Watt, says, let's just fast forward to when we've got belts with flags on them, just moving this to flag football. Current Miami Dolphins safety, Javon Holland, said something similar. Tackling is banned. Retired running back. Let's get the offensive perspective. Even a running back, Mike Davis, recently retired, says, as an offensive player, this is wild. LOL. Josh Metellus, Vikings safety, says the competition committee doesn't care about defense. They want to make it harder for us to succeed. Get one more opposing viewpoint. Retired all-pro guard Kyle Long with a string of tweets basically saying this is a good thing. Get dangerous tackles out of the game, reduces injuries, learn how to tackle better, basically. That's the data coming out of this is that the NFL reviewed tackles last year. They found roughly 250 instances of this swivel hip drop tackle. 20% of these tackles result in an injury. I saw the math that it averaged out to about 1 per game. So the takes are out there. Everybody's got an opinion. And I know this isn't spicy, but I guess we'll just see where this goes because I'm incredibly curious what this means. First of all, at some point, it's wasted effort complaining because the rule just passed. The NFL's going to do this. They're going to try to legislate this tackle. So unless you're willing to stop watching, which me, no, not happening. I'll be watching. So let's adapt to this new normal where the NFL is going to try to legislate this. I do think let's go through what it is for starters. My good friend Jory Epstein in Orlando at the owners meetings talked to competition committee chair Rich McKay about what this means. Basically, they're going to ask refs to call this penalty in game, but only if you see these 3 aspects of grabbing an opponent to get control, then swivel him. I'm like pantomiming this. I don't know how well. Basically, swivel yourself behind him and use your weight to, quote, unweight him, basically dropping your weight to pull him down. In a lot of instances, you see guys' legs get tangled up under the tackler, which results in serious injury. The two that people are going to bring up: Logan Wilson's tackle of Ravens tight end Mark Andrews on Thursday Night Football last year knocked him out for the second half of the season. And going back to the 2022-23 playoffs, Cowboys running back Tony Pollard got tackled this way, broke his fibula, sprained his ankle, really gnarly stuff. So they're trying to get rid of that. My only question is, how effectively are NFL refs going to be able to see this in the moment? How are you going to process all of that criteria? You see players do this a lot when they're tackling from behind. If you lose the angle on the ball carrier from the front, you typically do this to stop a guy as he's moving past you. Can the refs see all of this and legislate it quickly enough to make accurate calls? I do think one interesting thing we're hearing from Rich McKay and other NFL officials is that they might try to legislate this with fines, less so than tackles, which, look, I'm sorry, NFL players, I don't want you to lose money, but I prefer that. If you're sending out fines on Mondays and Tuesdays to try to correct this and guys can see it and work on it in practice that week and work on not doing it, I prefer that to a situation where these flags are getting thrown during 2-minute drills. Maybe you bring down a ball carrier this way as he's going for the first down marker. All of a sudden, the offense gets an extra 15 yards in a situation with less than 2 minutes to play. I understand that right there is what people are upset about. And I don't think there's a way to know right now how good or bad of a job the NFL is going to do of it until we see how this season goes. I do think there's potential for disaster, but if they focus on the teaching element of it, where they maybe send out a fine or maybe send out notice after the fact and keep the flags to a minimum, then maybe this is a little bit overblown. And yeah, if you can get those handful of tackles out of games, this might not be a bad thing. That is my measured take. I'm not going to say I have a ton of confidence. A lot of times when we see big rule changes like this, the first year is trial and error at best. I would guess that this is going to lead to some headaches. But like I said, the way they want to legislate it, I think will dictate just how much this aggravates players, fans, coaches during the season. So I'm going to try my best to give them the benefit of the doubt that they'll try to do this in a way that doesn't interfere with big time moments. But you know right now that the first time a flag is thrown in a big time moment, it is going to dominate the sports take culture for at least a week or two, because this is a hard thing to officiate. I mean, you talk about bang, bang plays. This is the epitome of that. I don't know how NFL refs are going to judge the legality of tackles as they happen, especially in high stake moments. Good luck with that. We will see how they handle it, but it's officially a rule. The swivel hip drop tackle out of the NFL, and we wait to see how they legislate it. Two other things worth mentioning. Competition committee did vote on a rule that basically says a coach can be awarded a third chance to challenge during a game if he's successful once. It used to be you had to win both of your challenges in a game to get a third one. Now you only have to do it once. I wish the NFL would just make everything reviewable the way college football does, but that is not the game. So congrats, coaches. It's a little easier to get that third challenge. You only have to be successful once. Another one, which I think it's actually flying under the radar compared to the hip drop tackle, is that the NFL is going to allow replay officials to review subjective calls, to review calls that refs call on the field. The things that piss us off the most, like intentional grounding, roughing the passer, they are going to allow a replay official to look at that. So if a quarterback is ruled to have been hit in the head, or potentially if a tackler goes low on a quarterback, that can now be reviewed, and refs can say after the fact, oh, wait, that wasn't roughing the passer. I love this development. You talk about making the game a little bit easier on defenses. I guess it's a give and take, because now you can't hip drop tackle, but refs can look at roughing the passer. I think that's a big development. They can also do this with intentional grounding. So the deck is stacked in the favor of quarterbacks, but maybe this will make it a little bit more balanced for defenses. We'll see how it goes. Owners meetings are ongoing during the week. We'll keep you updated with anything else that comes out of there. The other news I wanted to mention, like I said at the top of the show, it's a little bit old news by now, but Friday night, deal that a lot of people thought was going to get done, got done. The Kansas City Chiefs trade cornerback L'Jarius Sneed to the Tennessee Titans for a future third round pick, a 2025 third round pick, and a swap of seventh round picks. A surprisingly small price for a guy that helped lead the Chiefs defense to a championship this season, one of the best lockdown corners in the NFL this year. A lot of speculation about why that is. Partially the size of the contract that Sneed was looking for. Sneed's expected to sign a 4-year, $76 million contract extension. And then the whisper you hear is concern about a knee that has bothered Sneed at times during his career. That contract is pending a physical. Smaller price than I think what the Chiefs were hoping to get, but you do wind up getting a third round pick for it. And I think if you're a Chiefs fan trying to make sense of this, for starters, you managed to keep Chris Jones, which seemed impossible at the start of the 2023 season. And as much as I like L'Jarius Sneed, I'm prioritizing the best defensive tackle in football every time, especially now that Aaron Donald is retired. Chris Jones can have that title. On top of that, the money you save by getting him off the tag, I think frees the Chiefs up. Not to go do something crazy this year, I would guess. But you think about guys like Creed Humphrey, like Trey Smith on your offensive line. Keep in mind the fact the Chiefs have an open spot at left tackle. You take that $20 million and you can reinvest it in several positions instead of one. That's my guess about what the Chiefs are going to do. I get it. It's a bummer to lose a guy as good as L'Jarius Sneed for a pick in next year's draft. But if there's any team we're not going to worry about being able to retool, it's the Kansas City Chiefs. I think they'll be just fine. As for the Tennessee Titans, round of applause for general manager Ran Carthon going for it, because that's what the Titans are doing. And I don't mean going for it in terms of being in the Super Bowl this year. I think that would be biting off more than you could chew. But Ran Carthon is clearly very determined to find out just how good Will Levis is, just how good his team can be with a good quarterback in place, because that's what Tennessee has done. They have loaded up their roster in free agency. They trade for L'Jarius Sneed. They go out and give a boatload of money to Calvin Ridley. They sign Tony Pollard to be their lead running back after losing Derrick Henry. They sign Lloyd Cushenberry, arguably the best center on the market. They sign cornerback Chidobe Awuzie to play opposite of L'Jarius Sneed now. I'm throw in Roger McCreary. I heard you saying this, Justin. The Titans have one of the best cornerback trios in the NFL right now, on paper at least. This team, I'm not going to say they're loaded, but this team is ready to compete if Will Levis is good. That is, I mean, if you're going to build your team through free agency, a lot of people will tell you it's not the smartest way to do it. You wind up overpaying on some players, but you can't argue. The Titans are probably going to draft an offensive tackle at 7 overall. With Peter Skoronski there, with Lloyd Cushenberry there, their offensive line should be workable. DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley is a nice way to start your receiver core. Tony Pollard, defense. There's nothing missing if Will Levis is good. If he's ready to go, this is a team that can compete for a playoff spot. And I wonder, watching the step that the Houston Texans took, I wonder how much that affected the Tennessee Titans, saying, oh, wow, there are some really talented quarterbacks in our division now. We're not getting anywhere without making some big moves. Well, the Titans have done that. Now we wait to see how well it works out. If it works, I mean, if they get the answer to the question and Will Levis is good, none of this matters. If you find out you have a guy that you can build around, these veteran deals will go away eventually. You can get away from them. If it doesn't work, everybody's probably fired eventually. At least Ran Carthon probably is, because Will Levis was his pick. These free agency moves are going to be tied to him. So it's a gamble, because there won't be a lot of excuses for why the Titans can't at least be competitive. So I applaud them for doing it. I applaud them. The Titans were not an interesting team a few weeks ago. They are a very interesting team right now, punctuated by this trade for L'Jarius Sneed. We will see how they do with those raised expectations. That does it for the news, recapping rule changes, free agency, all that good stuff. Now we get into the meat of it. My guy, Bucky Brooks, joined us to turn our focus to the NFL draft, starting with the most important position of all, quarterback. All right, as promised, the calendar is moving on from free agency. The NFL draft in our sights. We are inside of a calendar month until the first round of the 2024 NFL draft kicks off. So, with that in mind, who better to bring on to today's show? An old friend, a good friend, our own Bucky Brooks. Busy time of year. I mean, you're always busy, man. You're always doing something, but with a month to go to the draft, I mean, this is crunch time for what you do. Am I right?
Oh, yeah, no, this is crunch time, but it's also the best time, right, Dave? So we've had like the little, I would call the football sabbatical, but football never really takes a sabbatical because you go right from the Super Bowl to the combine, free agent frenzy, then the draft. And so as soon as the Super Bowl is done, everyone's like, all right, that's great. We forget about that. Now let's look ahead because my team's going to the Super Bowl next year. And here are the players that are going to help us get them there.
Nobody sells hope better than the NFL. It's incredible, which that's kind of a theme for what I want to talk to you about. We're bringing you in, and I'm planning on having you in frequently here as we lead up to the
Mhm,
draft. So just get ready for it. But where else would we start but quarterback? And this is obviously a draft where several of them are going to go very highly. It's
mhm.
entirely possible the first 4 picks in this draft could all be quarterbacks. So here's what I want to do. We're going to talk some Caleb Williams in a minute. That's always going to be interesting. But for the purposes of this, I feel very confident saying he's going to
Mhm,
go number one. I feel very confident saying he's going to be a Chicago Bear. So
mhm.
let's put Caleb on the back burner for at least a few minutes. And I want to talk to you about a story that you wrote for us on foxsports.com last week. You can check it out, foxsports.com, the Fox Sports app. Bucky Brooks, you kind of made the case for the other 3 guys, Jayden Daniels of LSU, Drake
Mhm.
Maye of UNC, JJ McCarthy of Michigan. You kind of made the case for all of those guys as the next quarterback drafted. So I want to go through that with you.
Mhm.
Where better to start with a Tar Heel like yourself than Drake Maye? Because I want to be honest with you, I'm a little bit surprised that there's as much debate as there is. Like coming out of college football season, I thought it was pretty clear cut. And that's even with my guy Jayden
Mhm.
Daniels winning the Heisman Trophy. I thought it was pretty clear cut that Drake Maye was QB2, but it seems like there's a fair amount of pushback on that. What do you think?
Yeah, no, there should be a fair amount of pushback because heading into the season, everyone thought it was going to be the Caleb Williams versus Drake Maye conversation. Drake Maye had a spectacular first season as a starter with the Tar Heels. I mean, he lit it up. He had 35 touchdowns with 3,500 yards. He rushed for over 600 yards, had over 7 rushing touchdowns. He was everything that you wanted to see in the modern dual threat quarterback. I mean, he could give you what you wanted to see from the pocket, but also had the athleticism to extend plays, to make things happen on design quarterback runs. He was fantastic. Then you play this season, and it's not the same. New offensive coordinator, new supporting cast around him. He appeared to be pressing from all the pressure that was on him, kind of trying to show people that he's really QB1, and he didn't really play well. Now, that said, him not playing well still featured a lot of moments where you could grade the flashes and see big time arm talent, uh, tremendous athleticism, had the improvisational playmaking ability that everyone wants in a quarterback now. So the creativity was there, but he was just so hot and cold. And to be honest, he didn't play well in the big games that were on the calendar. So everyone on the schedule wanted to see how is he going to play against Clemson. Clemson's been the bully of the block uh, in the last few years in the ACC. Didn't really perform very well. And then, Georgia Tech game they lose, didn't really get it going, played well against Duke, but can you say that that is enough to cement his status? And so you end up leaving with more questions than answers his second season. And because of that, he opened the door for other quarterbacks like a Jayden Daniels, for a JJ McCarthy, who outperformed him on the field, even though he may be the better NFL projection.
Which, I mean, I think that's the toughest thing to answer when you're talking about quarterbacks. And you can apply it to all 4 of these guys. You look at Caleb Williams, his 2023 season, not as amazing as the one where he won the Heisman. And you look and you say, oh, well, Jordan Addison was off to the NFL. What about this USC offensive line? Jayden Daniels, you say, yeah, anybody could succeed with these two top 20 receivers on their offense. And you apply it to Drake Maye, JJ McCarthy as well. How do you separate the supporting cast or lack thereof in the case of
Mm.
Drake Maye when you're trying to evaluate just how good of a prospect this guy is?
Yeah, it becomes a challenge. Like obviously, Jayden Daniels had an all-star supporting cast, like two guys that are certified first-round picks on the perimeter. But Joe Burrow also had first-round guys. So you got to be able to separate the play from what the assist they get from the people on the outside. I think a lot of it is when you're looking at them, how much do you feel their presence in the game? Do you feel Drake May have an impact on the game, positively or negatively, when he has the ball in his hands? Does he appear to have the ability to put the offense on his back in key moments? Because ultimately, quarterbacks are judged down in how they perform in those gotta have it situations. So those situations would be third down, 2 minute, red zone, end of game. How do they perform in those moments? And too often for Drake May, it was a little clunky. It wasn't what you expect it to be for someone as talented as he is. That said, when people look at the offense, like coaches have said, man, I just don't know what they were doing offensively in terms of the rhyme or reasoning behind some of the decisions that they made from a schematic standpoint. Could they have done a better job of lightening the load on him by running the ball more and doing some things that would allow him to have some more layups baked into the cake? So, as much as you want to take him to task for not playing well, you also can take the coaching staff to task for maybe not setting him up to have the kind of success that he had the previous season.
So I think, and you tell me if I'm wrong. If I'm excited about Drake Maye, I think the reason is just because of that very Josh Allen-y sort of skill set,
Yeah.
the athleticism combined. I mean, if you're new to this, which I doubt you are, if you're listening to this
Mhm.
podcast, but go turn on some highlights of Drake Maye and just watch the ball come out of this guy's hand. So that just physical skill set is what gets you excited about Drake Maye. If you're nervous about it, if you don't view him as QB2, is it the tendency to play hero ball? Is it, like you mentioned, maybe not showing up in the biggest moments? What is the biggest thing that gives you pause about him?
Okay, so I would say the biggest thing would be the lack of experience. So when you dig deep into Drake May's journey, Drake May didn't play the final season of his high school career because of COVID. He sat behind Sam Howell his freshman year because Sam Howell was the dude. And then he played the final 2 years. So of the last 4 years, he's really only played two of them. Now you begin to talk about the guys that have flamed out in the league recently. They've been the guys who don't have a lot of college experience, a lot of collegiate starts. So with 26 starts, he enters the league, and is that enough for him to be ready to play right away? Depending on where he lands, he may not have the luxury of being able to redshirt and sit behind a veteran and learn how to play the game on the side before he has to get into the game. So I'm a little worried about the inexperience. I'm worried about the streakiness, but I think some of the things when it comes to his streakiness can be fixed because the flashes are so high that you have to give him credit for making these spectacular plays. Can you kind of raise his floor where he's more consistent and he delivers time after time? Some coaches will say, yeah, that's coaching. That's part of making sure that we put him in a system that really works to his skill set, surrounding with high level players, and he won't be tasked with doing some of the things he was asked to do at North Carolina. It's really a matter, are you willing to do the evaluation on the production, or are you willing to really trust your instincts on the projection?
Maybe I'm just a sucker for too many highlight reels, but the flashes are just incredibly intriguing. It's hard to not get excited about that. All right, let's move on to my guy, the LSU Tiger. Which,
Yeah.
hey, one thing I'm going to tell you right now, we cannot say experience is a problem for Jayden Daniels. My man started 55 college games. Obviously, the athletic ability, I mean, just a playmaker from anywhere on the field. I mean, the guy had more explosive plays as a runner and as a thrower than you could count at LSU. Like I said, I mean, the dual threat ability,
Mhm.
what, a
Mhm.
thousand rushing yards last year on top of his passing profile, that speaks for itself. If you're not sold on Jayden Daniels as QB2, what do you think is the reason why?
Okay, so for all the positive things that Jayden Daniels brings, look, he's the only quarterback in college football history with 12,000 pass yards and 3,000 rush yards. You talk about the Heisman Trophy season. Anyone who caught a glimpse of him versus Florida in the SEC, just seeing him dominate the game, 300 passing, 200 rushing, a bunch of wow plays that just made you just kind of look, sit at the edge of your seat and just imagine what he could do at the next level. When you watch him throw it from the pocket, man, he throws dime after dime after dime. Touch, timing, and accuracy. He has all of those things. He can do it on the move, but really, he is his most comfortable in the pocket. And as you watched him progress from a streaky playmaker at Arizona State to being very consistent under Brian Kelly at LSU, there are a lot of positives when it comes to his development. The criticism that you have for Jay Daniels, number one thing, when you look at him, slender build, and you wonder immediately durability, is that going to be an issue? Even though he logged 55 career starts, you just wonder, can that frame hold up if he gets outside the pocket and takes hits? Remember, we questioned Bryce Young and what we thought he would be at the next level just because of the size and diminutive frame. So just the slender frame is one thing. Also, what was the big difference between how he played at Arizona State and how he played at LSU? Is it the supporting cast was better, so his numbers are a bit inflated because he played with better players? Why wasn't he able to kind of put it together for multiple seasons at a high level? Even though like his first season at LSU was solid, it certainly wasn't what it was last year when he won the Heisman Trophy. I think those questions are: is it scheme or is it supporting cast? More so, is it the talent that Jayden Daniels brings on his own accord?
I do think like it's funny, and I'm not the guy to ask. I'm probably a little too close to the situation. Jayden Daniels was good in 2022. Like he was a little
Hmm.
inconsistent. I think he was a little less willing to take chances as a passer, but overall
Hmm.
still a very solid college quarterback. One thing I wanted to get your opinion on. I've seen this on social media that people critique Jayden for being unwilling or unable to throw over the middle of the field, and I don't think I buy that. I know he had
Hmm.
two amazing receivers in Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. who could stretch the field, but I think if
Hmm.
you go back and watch what LSU did, you see a guy who can make those throws when he needs to. Like you said, he's got plenty of good tape from inside the pocket.
In fact, I think he's at his best inside the pocket. I think you could probably make the case that he is the best timing rhythm quarterback in the draft, even better than Caleb Williams when it comes to just throwing on time and doing it as the coaches draw it up on the whiteboard. He does all of those things. And if we're really being honest when it comes to quarterback play, the most difficult thing that most people struggle with is throwing outside the numbers. That's the farther throw. That's the one where you get the one-on-one coverage and you have to throw out breaking routes towards the sideline. Lamar Jackson couldn't do that stuff at Louisville. Even now, everything for Lamar Jackson and Brock Purdy in breaking over the middle of the field, shortest line between 2 points, straight line. So it's right there over the middle. For Jayden Daniels, being able to throw in traffic, I don't see it as an issue, particularly working over the middle of the field. I think he has anticipation, he has superb timing, all of those things. In fact, I think he's more of a dink and dunk intermediate assassin than being someone that is just loading up for the deep ball and doing those things. That gives him an opportunity to have success in the right system. And so as we play matchmaker, I think system fit is everything when it comes to Jayden Daniels.
Intermediate assassin is my new favorite phrase for this draft site. Real quick, so real quickly, and then we'll move on to the last of these three. But if Jayden Daniels were to slip, or let's say he doesn't go two,
Mhm.
maybe he even slips a few more spots. Do you think it's more because of the frame? Because he is, I mean, there's no way around it. He is a slight guy going to the NFL. Or do you think teams look at it and say, this guy's going to turn 24 during his rookie year? He's played 55 college games. Maybe he's closer to his ceiling already than some of these other less developed quarterbacks.
I wonder about that because like that's kind of been the new thing, right? When everyone's talking about experience and ceiling and kind of want more. It's almost like a baseball thing, right? In baseball, they want the young guy that can kind of get it done or whatever. And so talk about Jay Daniels being 24, Brock Purdy, I just looked is 24 years old. I don't think it's an issue. I don't think the age thing is an issue. I think the slender build is more of an issue. And my reference to Brock Purdy is because Brock Purdy, the 7th round pick, Mr. Irrelevant, played a ton of games, had a lot of starts at Iowa State. I think he had like 49, maybe he had 30 or so wins when he was at Iowa State. And the success that he has had and the success that others have had with long resumes of being able to play, I think that plays in his favor. So, yeah, the criticism will be okay, he's a little older in this class, so maybe he was a man amongst boys. But the experience is actually what you wanted to position because when I went back and tracked the number of guys that have played really well early in their careers at the position, all of those guys lost significant snaps. To Andrew Luck, to Donovan McNabbs, they all kind of did it. Peyton Manning, they all did 40 plus snaps, 40 plus starts in college. I think that's a recipe for success because you got to see the game, you got to play the game to get better at the game. He enters the league probably being the best college football player that could be because he saw so many different things.
Yeah, I don't think I buy that having a more complete picture of a guy is a bad thing, which let's wrap it up among the big four. The guy that has the probably the least complete picture, I think,
Mhm.
anyway. And I mean, look, JJ McCarthy, one of the most accomplished quarterbacks in Michigan history. Wolverine fans, don't come for me. He won a national title. He did everything he needed to do at Michigan. But the bottom line is that they just did not ask as much of him as what we've seen from these other guys. That's the note on him. I saw in your story on
Mhm.
foxsports.com 713 pass attempts across his career. That's 28 starts. On top of that, I went back and looked at it, Bucky. He threw 32 passes during the fourth quarter and overtime of his final season at Michigan. That is how dominant the Wolverines were, that they just didn't need him that often at the end of these games. I will point out he balled in the fourth quarter and
Mhm.
overtime against Alabama. He was a big part of the reason why they won that
Mhm.
semifinal game. But the point is still, we just haven't seen a whole lot of this guy in these situations. So can you just help me fill in the blanks on JJ McCarthy?
Yeah, so JJ McCarthy benefits from being what we call winner guy. He's a guy that won at a high level, 27-1, national champion, led his team to the college football playoff. And even though people will take him to task for being maybe the game manager as opposed to the playmaker, I think there are a lot of positives to that. Imagine being a highly decorated recruit and you choose to go to a school where you know you're not going to throw the football. Your main role is going to be to take the ball, hit it in the belly of the running back, and get out of the way. Every now and then, they'll give you a few crumbs where you can throw the ball around the yard, but it won't be the driving force of the offense. I think he benefits from being the guy who has already done that. I'm going to manage the game. I'm going to take my ego out of it. The only thing that matters to me is winning. The other part that he benefits, he's the only one that has an NFL player and coach who has developed quarterbacks, coaching him, whispering those sweet nothings in his ear for 3+ years, where he's been able to learn from the guy who taught Andrew Luck how to play at a high level, the guy who resurrected Alex Smith, the guy who discovered and made Colin Kaepernick a real thing in this league. Jim Harbaugh's endorsement of JJ McCarthy, not only as the greatest quarterback in Michigan, knowing that Tom Brady and Brian Greasy played there, but also being able to say, oh, no, I think he's the number one quarterback in this draft. When you have Jim Harbaugh rubber stamping JJ, it makes you go back and think, hey, are we missing something because he didn't stuff the stat sheet? This guy has one. Let's look at his third down tape. Oh, man, he's really impressive on third down when it's got to have it. You talked about he delivered in the college football playoff when they played against Alabama and they needed to put it on his back. So there's a lot of positives when it comes to JJ McCarthy because the intangibles are right, the winning pedigree is right, the talent you see. He is very similar to me to Alex Smith when Alex Smith was coming out of Utah and the way that Alex Smith played when he got with Jim Harbaugh and how he continued to play when he got with Andy Reid. Environment, circumstances are everything when it comes to JJ McCarthy because he has the right stuff to play well as the manager, the managerial type, but it has to be the right situation for him to be able to play that way.
When you say that, do you think, and I mean, let's be clear, like virtually all of these guys could probably benefit from a year off, but that's just not the way the NFL
Mhm.
works anymore. But do you see JJ McCarthy as a guy who could potentially redshirt. I mean, I know a lot of people are going to tie him
Mhm,
to Minnesota, and that seems like it
mhm.
makes sense because Sam Darnold is at least a guy who can get you through the first half of the season, if not an entire season. Do you think that is a sort of circumstance where maybe he benefits from sitting behind somebody at least for a little bit?
I think whenever we talk about JJ McCarthy, I think we have to tie JJ McCarthy with Drake Maye because their experiences are similar. Both of those guys need to be in a place where if they need to redshirt, they can redshirt. So the two situations that you have that are really like that, New England, because Jacoby Brissett has been a starter, he's played reasonably well when he's had an opportunity to play. So in New England, no one has to rush onto the field. Same could be said for Sam Darnold in Minnesota when you have Kevin O'Connell and those things. Both of those guys could benefit from being able to sit behind an established veteran who could play winning football, learn how to win the game, how to play, I would say, pro football the right way. With only 20 starts, I mean, man, it's tough to throw them right in there. So, yeah, JJ McCarthy and Drake Maye could probably benefit from sitting on the sidelines for a little bit before they play. And I will say this, the common denominator between the guys that sit, because I want you to think about even Carson Palmer back in yesteryear sat
Yeah.
behind John Kitna. But the thing about the guys that sit and play, by the end of the third year, we know. So Phillip Rivers, Carson Palmer sat those first years. Carson Palmer sat one, Phillip Rivers sat two. But by the end of their third season, they were Pro Bowl players. So it's about identifying the talent, but also making sure you have enough consistency within the organization that you know this is going to be our guy. And we have to kind of like slow cook the grits. We're okay slow cooking them. We ain't got to put them out there right away. No instant grits.
I mean, easier said than done, though, right? And like that is, it's a fun subplot too of that. Some of these teams that are going to be picking quarterbacks, let's just be brutally honest
Mhm,
about it. Don't have a great track record. I mean, the Bears' history with quarterbacks speaks for itself. Washington, I mean, Doug Williams was a
mhm,
long, long, long time ago.
mhm.
And I mean, not to say the Patriots don't know how to develop a quarterback, but it's been a long time since they had to do what they did with Tom Brady. So there's a lot of interesting subplots here about which organizations are going to be developing these guys and trying to turn them into Pro Bowlers.
Yeah, that's the thing. But here's the thing. I think this class, this quarterback class, will benefit. Look no farther than Jordan Love. So now we have a real example of a franchise really being very patient with the quarterback. And everyone loves Jordan Love now. But remember when he played the Kansas City Chiefs game and everyone's like, oh my
I
God, he can't
do.
play. We got to get him up out of there. And
It's
how bad it
not
was and
great.
those things. And watching him in the preseason, people are like, oh my God, I don't know if this guy can play. But then when he finally gets an opportunity to start in year four, everyone is like, oh, hmm, maybe he's a little, maybe they did take their time and develop it or whatever. I think the franchises have to go in and really it comes from ownership. Everyone has to be committed to like a 3 or maybe 4 year plan with that quarterback, knowing, hey, we got the quarterback, but just because we take him high doesn't mean we got to rush him onto the field. And I know we're in this nuanced thing where everyone wants to benefit from the rookie contract and all that stuff or whatever. But at the end of the day, you have to take the player where he is and get him to a point where he can function and thrive. And some guys can take playing, other guys need to sit and wait. But you can't allow draft status to determine when you thrust them onto the field.
So there's still plenty of time until actual draft night. But especially with quarterbacks of this caliber, it feels like the hay is mostly in the barn. I mean, you still got these
Mhm.
guys they're still going to do 30 visits, so there's still time for teams to change their minds. But for you and me, for the guys that watch tape and do this from afar, who is your QB2, Buck?
So the second quarterback to me that I would take Jayden Daniels off the board. I think
Okay.
it's the combination of the dual threat playmaking ability and the experience. I believe he's going to benefit that. The other thing, and this is one of the intangible qualities, the fact that he left Arizona State and he went to LSU with Brian Kelly. I never thought that combination would work. When I saw that he was going to LSU, I was like, as volatile as Brian Kelly can be, Jane Daniels was like, yeah, sign me up. I want to go there. I want to take hard coaching. I want to do that. And I want to do it under, I mean, you're a Tiger. You know about the Bayou Bengals. You
That's
know,
right.
playing in Death Valley with that fan base, it's not an easy thing,
No, it is not.
particularly when Joe Burrow, his legend, the legend of Joe Burrow, only gets bigger each year. The fact that he was able to go in there, do it, and win a Heisman Trophy, to me, that's significant. The other players are really good players, but I think the experience and just having to go through that adversity, I want my quarterbacks with a few scuffs on them. I want them to kind of have to go through some tough stuff because the league is going to be tough for them. I think he'll benefit the most from the long term experience that he had in college, and that should give him an opportunity to play well right away in the league.
I love this because the UNC guy is backing the LSU quarterback, and me as the LSU guy, I'm in love with the upside of Drake Maye. And
Yeah.
falling in love with upside can be dangerous. It doesn't always work out, but if Drake Maye develops to match the natural
Hmm.
talent that he has, then you are talking about a Josh Allen type of guy who can do stuff that only two or three people in the world can. So
So,
I
so
love
I'm
Jayden, but I'm enamored with that upside.
So I'm with you on that. And so I had when I was a young scout in the business, I had a mentor of mine tell me, hey, you got to grade the flashes because if they show it that they can do it once, they can do it again.
Yep.
But you have to have the confidence that you can put them in an environment where they do it. For me, Drake May's success or failure hinges completely on where he goes and who's the guy that is nurturing him as a quarterback. Much like Josh Allen, because I had a hard time giving Josh Allen the grade that some of my compadres wanted to give him and saying, "Oh man, you seen him do it." And 2 years ago he was great, but I'm like, man, last year I went and saw him at the Potato Bowl. He was fine. He wasn't great. He was fine. But watching that progression, struggled a little bit his first year, got better the second year, didn't really pop the third year. I think you have to be all the way in on Drake, man. You can't get scared away by the stuff. And I believe it's easier said than done because the noise is louder now regarding young quarterbacks from the Twitterverse and well, I guess the X verse, that's what we'll call it. It's louder now. And that makes it really, really hard. You got to be very convicted as a team builder that I picked the right quarterback and I'm going to let him play through some of those rough patches.
Maybe I think you just figured it out because way back then I was loudly out on Josh Allen. I just did not believe in a guy who was not a Power 5 quarterback who had middling results at
Same,
Wyoming.
similar. Yeah.
And he spent the last 6 years proving me wrong. So maybe I just don't want to make that mistake again. All right, Buck, real quick before we get you out of here. I want to touch on Caleb briefly. I didn't want to start with him because we've
Mhm.
talked about him so much, but QB1, I thought you wrote a really great story for us at foxsports.com just about where he stacks up among other QB1 prospects, meaning guys that have gone first overall in their respective drafts. So you stacked him up against the likes of Michael Vick, Andrew Luck, Matthew Stafford, Cam Newton, Joe Burrow, those types of guys. I thought it was interesting over the last, 20 or so years, you had him ranked sixth among guys who have gone at the top of the draft. I think that's useful context because we get so swept up in this every year where every guy that comes out is generational. And I think it's important to remember that even if Caleb Williams is great, you got to keep all of that context in mind.
Yeah, you got to keep it in mind. And you do want to grade the player against like what traditionally has been the number one overall pick. So I want to give you a definition of like number ones or guys that go top five. So when I came into the league as a scout, the first thing that they tell you to say, hey, if you're going to put a top five grade on a player, it has to be someone that you can envision being a gold jacket player, a Hall of Fame caliber player. That he, within 2 to 3 years, he's going to dominate the league. He's going to dominate his position. There are going to be conversations with him being the best at that position in his era and in being one of the best to ever play. That's how stringent that list should be. So when you think about the number one quarterbacks that have come off the board, when we talk about the Andrew Luck and how transcendent he was expected to be, Michael Vick being transcendent in terms of his athleticism and all of that other stuff, Cam Newton, Matthew Stafford, those guys had superpowers that you could feel when you watched the tape. Now, people might not have liked what they had stylistically, but there were things that you could point to. When I look at Caleb Williams, everyone would talk about the spectacular plays that he's able to make off, like, look, out of structure. He gets outside of structure. He makes these crazy throws where he throws from a variety of different platforms that you absolutely love. You see him run and do all of that other stuff. But I must say this. He's only a tick under over 6'1". He's 215 to 225 pounds. So he's not physically imposing like a Cam Newton. He's not the speedster that Michael Vick was. So it's that gray area in terms of what he's able to do. And so I have him slotted right behind Joe Burrow because the conversation when Joe Burrow came out was very similar. Remember, Joe Burrow had look, he started at Ohio State. He had an okay season before he really broke out his final season, and they
Right.
had that super team where they did it. To me, Caleb Williams and Joe Burrow are close in terms of when you give them the right playmakers around them, man, they can deal like the Vegas casino dealer. Like they're just the blackjack dealer, just spraying it all over the place. What we need to see from Caleb Williams, can he play on time and in rhythm? Because it's great to have the guy that can run around and make all these spectacular plays. But when you need it as an offensive coordinator, can he do it as it was instructed coming into the huddle? That's why when people make the comparison to Patrick Mahomes, I'm like, no, he to me reminds me more of Russell Wilson and Russell Wilson's prime in Seattle. Yes, he has the magic where he can close the game out in the fourth quarter, but I don't know if you want to put it all on him to do what Patrick Mahomes has had to do early in his career. I don't know if he has Patrick Mahomes caliber talent. I see him more as a Russell Wilson type, which is certainly good enough to be a perennial Pro Bowler and a Super Bowl champion. I just think it's different than the guy that we're going to recognize in the next 10 years as the GOAT, the greatest that we've ever seen play the position.
I think Russell Wilson is a really interesting comp, and I think I can even see the similarity to Joe Burrow. They don't look the same playing, and I think Caleb has a stronger arm than Joe, but just the way that they do it, it feels similar when I watch. I'm curious, one last thing for you. If Caleb has a superpower, or maybe I don't know if you can have a superpower before you've
Mhm.
even gotten to the league, but if you were going to identify what he does best, what we would call his superpower, what do you think that is?
I would say just the improvisational playmaking ability. That's his superpower. But I would say from a physical standpoint, he's different than some of these other guys. And even Joe Burrow, I think people would say that Joe Burrow's superpower was his processing speed, how quickly he could get LSU to empty the formation and say that, hey, man, y'all can bring pressure, whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm going to beat the blitz with my mind. That's what he could do. For Caleb, I don't know if Caleb has that because he certainly doesn't have what Cam and Michael Vick had in terms of the superior physical talents. So his ability to run around and make plays, that would be a superpower. But what if I say this? Because we didn't get the testing numbers from Caleb Williams. What if I told you that Justin Fields was a better athlete and maybe Justin Fields has a stronger arm?
I
Like,
I I
how does
I
that?
believe that. I don't have a problem
So
believing that. Like Justin Fields is a
okay,
freak. Let's not get it twisted.
okay, right. Okay, so how does that conversation play out? We know that they made the choice and Caleb Williams is a guy, but if we talk about physical talents, Justin Fields' physical talents are superior to Caleb Williams. And so it makes for a different conversation. But Caleb Williams is the number one. But I'm just saying, as we built him up to be uh, this mythical figure, this superhero, I think we just kind of need to temper our expectations how he's going to take the league by storm. His physicality, his physical tools are not why he would dominate. It would be his ability to work his way out of jams while being a very accurate passer and playmaker that will separate him from the other number ones that have come in this league.
I think that's why this is such a useful conversation because it's easy to just be like, "Oh my God, he's the best prospect in decades," and I don't think that's true. I do think he's completely worthy of going first in this draft. The accuracy is phenomenal in my opinion. The arm strength is more than good enough, and I love. Okay, Buck, see if you follow me here. I've been saying this for a while. I think I've seen other people say it too, but his athleticism reminds me of Mahomes in the sense that
Mhm.
he's always just fast enough. Like he doesn't look like
Yeah.
Michael Vick out there, but like if he needs 4 yards, he's going to get 5, and if he needs 10 yards, he's going to get 12. It always seems like it works out that way.
No, that's a great comparison because that's what Patrick Mahomes does. It's I guess it was the funny, awkward athleticism that Patrick Mahomes does that makes you look up at the Super Bowl and be like, man, he has 67 yards rushing.
Right.
Like when does he pick up these yards? And it's almost like the cartoon character that's running from the bad guy, where he's just able to get away and do it, kind of like Bugs Bunny running around, like just enough to get away from the bad guy. That is what Caleb Williams has. It's also what Pat Mahomes has. So that is a good comparison to bring it back full circle because you only need to be fast enough to escape the rush. You don't have to be the fastest guy on the field to be able to do it. If you can escape the rush and make the plays that he's been able to show that he can make with his arm, that's plenty enough superhero stuff to be able to get it done uh, with your superpowers.
I'm not going to fall victim to hyperbole because it was just 2021 when we had a loaded quarterback class like this. So
I
it's
think I said it was the golden era of quarterback play. We're in the golden era. And here we are with two starters of the 19 quarterbacks that have been selected in the past two drafts. It's a little different. It
hey,
is a little different.
but all it takes is one draft class to hit and we're back on the train. So we'll see. I'm so excited to see where these guys land. I'm so excited to see how they play. Bucky, I love talking draft with you, man. We're definitely going to do this more as we get closer to the draft. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, man, thanks for having me on. Should be done.
Thanks again to Bucky Brooks for stopping by. That almost does it for the show. I'd be remiss if I didn't update you on our own trip through March Madness. The basketball tournament is on to the third round. We are on to our second round, a busy, busy weekend on the YouTube channel. More than 450,000 of y'all voted in our best coach bracket. What a performance. Thank you for engaging. Thank you for taking part in our little bracket competition. It's been a heck of a fun weekend. It's going to get more fun now because we're on to the second round. I think a lot of the matchups in the beginning are pretty obvious. Not a whole lot of drama. I don't think that's going to be the case starting right now. Voting is open on the YouTube channel. Go vote at NFL on Fox. That's the YouTube address. Go vote on our bracket. Second round has some bangers. Steelers coach Mike Tomlin going against Browns coach Kevin Stefanski, guy who's never had a losing record versus the two-time coach of the year. That's a good one in the division. Good AFC North bragging rights at stake. I'm interested to see Matt LaFleur versus Nick Sirianni. Do with that what you will. Two of the most consistent guys in the NFC over the last couple years. Dan Campbell against Mike McCarthy. I think Dan Campbell clearly enjoying the better run of success right now. Mike McCarthy's track record, though. A lot of good matchups here. I'm interested to see what y'all think of them and what the results will be as we whittle this down. Like I said, thank you so much for supporting it, for voting on it. Make sure you keep voting. At NFL on Fox is the YouTube channel. Appreciate it so much. We will be back later this week. More news coming out of the owners' meetings, I'm sure. Also have a very special guest later this week. The legend himself. Very LSU heavy show this week. The legend himself, Patrick Peterson, will be joining me later on this week. Really looking forward to that. If you're not subscribed, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you know the drill. At NFL on Fox Pod on the social channels, on Instagram, TikTok. You get it. You got it. Love y'all. I'll talk to y'all next time.